Hello, hello. Good morning. Welcome to Coffee and Miracles. I am Reverend Derek with the Love is Greater Than Fear Spiritual Center. There it is, one side of the screen. Today we are on lesson 4 of A Course in Miracles. So let's jump into it. This one's a little bit longer than the previous 3 days, but it just builds quite perfectly on the lessons. If you're someone who's wondering, should I skip around, try out different lessons? It's really important to understand that every lesson is subtly building upon the previous lessons. So it's really important to go in order and to kind of just follow the instructions. There's some of these will tell us how often to do them throughout the day. There is an app on Google and on the Apple Store, ACIM reminder that will set reminders for you, the suggesting that you do the exercises with the same frequency that the text is laying out. So check that out. It's called ACIM reminder. So we're going to jump into the lesson. Lesson 4. These thoughts do not mean anything. They are like the things I see in this room, on this street, from this window, in this place. Unlike the preceding ones, these exercises do not begin with the idea for the day. In these practice periods, begin with noting the thoughts that are crossing your mind for about a minute, then apply the idea to them. If you are already aware of unhappy thoughts, use them as subjects for the idea. Do not, however, select only the thoughts you think are bad. You will find if you train yourself to look at your thoughts that these represent such a mixture that, in a sense, none of them can be called good or bad. This is why they do not mean anything. In selecting the subjects for the application of today's idea, the usual specificity is required. Do not be afraid to use good thoughts as well as bad. None of them represent your real thoughts, which are being covered up by them. The good ones are but shadows of what lies beyond, and shadows make sight difficult. The bad ones are blocks to sight and make seeing impossible. You do not want either. This is a major exercise and will be repeated from time to time in somewhat different form. The aim here is to train you in the first steps towards the goal of separating the meaningless from the meaningful. It is a first attempt in the long-range purpose of learning to see the meaningless as outside you and the meaningful within. It is also the beginning of training your mind to recognize what is the same and what is different. And using your thoughts for application of the idea for today, identify each thought by the central figure or event it contains. For example, this thought about blank does not mean anything. It is like the things I see in this room, on the street, and so on. You can also use the idea for a particular thought that you recognize as harmful. This practice is useful, but is not a substitute for the more random procedures to be followed for the exercises. Do not, however, examine your mind for more than a minute or so. You are too inexperienced as yet to avoid a tendency to become pointlessly preoccupied. Further, since these exercises are the first of their kind, you may find the suspension of judgment in connection with these thoughts particularly difficult. Do not repeat these exercises more than 3 or 4 times during the day. We will return to them later. And so the mantra for the day is, these thoughts do not mean anything. They are like the things I see in this room, on the street, from this window, in this place. As already mentioned, you can check out acim.org for more information. You can also check out the ACIM reminder app. Now, I did want to just take a quick second and talk to you about the difference between an affirmation and a mantra, right? Because we're looking through here, and the lesson is a mantra. It's a mantra. It's an idea that we consider and contemplate in our mind. And we apply this mantra to both good and bad thoughts, right? Whether we perceive them as good or bad, we're still applying them to both. Now, what is an affirmation? An affirmation is typically a piece of spiritual truth that we affirm to be true for ourselves. Now, the challenge with that is that the way most people use them is they experience a negative thought or a negative feeling or a negative circumstance, and they use that positive affirmation to make themselves feel better about the situation. So, for example, somebody could be in a financial challenge, right? And they have this financial struggle, and they affirm, "Well, money comes to me easily and effortlessly," which is true, which is absolutely truth. But we know from like scientific research that psychologically, when we say something to ourselves that we don't believe, the way that impacts the brain. And in my own experience, I have found with positive affirmations that they sometimes will just make me even more frustrated, because here I am going through this negative experience and I'm affirming something positive, something that I am not experiencing. This is where a mantra is different, because a mantra is not an affirmation of spiritual truth necessarily. A mantra is an idea for you to consider. Now, ultimately, using these mantras will lead you to a place where your thinking tends to rest in those type of spiritual affirmations, those positive truths. But in order to get there, we have to do step by step. We have to bridge ourselves from negative thinking to loving thinking. Um, and so what the mantra does is it builds on itself every day, gives you an idea to consider. No one's telling you to believe any of this. Where the course doesn't ask you to believe this. The course is so beyond belief. It's just saying, consider this, okay? Consider the idea that these thoughts do not mean anything. They're like the things I see in this room. And we can apply this to so many different things today. You could be going through a financial struggle, a relationship struggle. I mean, this thought about my relationship does not mean anything. It's like the things I see in this room. My thought about my job does not mean anything. It is like the things I see in this room. This thought about my health, my this thought about politics, this thought about whatever thing it is. It could be an individual circumstance, it could be a collective circumstance. This thought about it does not mean anything. And we're just considering these thoughts. As we go through the next few lessons in the next couple of weeks, things will begin to shift and you'll begin to see why they don't mean anything. But for now, that's really unimportant. For now, we just want to be in the habit of, in a way, just questioning the thoughts that are happening in our mind. I hope that makes sense. We'll be live again tomorrow to go on to lesson 4 or lesson 5. Now, keep in mind, if you want to check us out on Instagram and on Facebook, we're also making daily posts. Would love to hear how the Course in Miracles workbook lessons are going for you. Would love to know what ahas you're having. Would love to know what questions you have. So feel free to comment on those pages. Check out what we have going on there. If you want more information about the Love is Greater Than Fear Center, head over to loveisgreaterthanfear.org. And if you want more information about A Course in Miracles, you can go to ACIM.org. You can read the workbook and the text on there for free. And then you can also order it on Amazon if you don't already have a copy. That is it for today. See you tomorrow.